You know what we're going to do today? We're just going to go off the cuff, on the fly, full improv. Number 25, we're a quarter of the way through the 100 book challenge. That is Every Man for Himself and God Against All, Werner Herzog. Okay. There's a lot in this book. There's a lot in this book. I really liked this book. Why do I read memoirs of filmmakers? Right? Why do I read memoirs of other artists? A big favorite of mine was Born Standing Up. I put a picture of it here, by Steve Martin. I just like, value, appreciate, and get a lot from memoirs, in particular autobiographies of artists from lots of different fields, certainly authors as well. I'll try not to drop that on the floor. You'll see behind me here on the shelf of fame, the shelf of favorites, Literary Outlaw by Ted Morgan. Still maybe my favorite nonfiction book of all time. Certainly my favorite author biography. Narrowing down the subspecies there. It's the life of William S. Burroughs, and as fascinating an author as Burroughs was, I think his life was actually more interesting as real life. Herzog may be the same. Reading this, though, there are two movies. My Best Fiend, which is a movie that Herzog made, about his relationship with Klaus Kinski, the madman of international cinema. And now the title of it escapes me, but it was the documentary about, I'll put a picture of it here. We're doing the research after. We're filling in holes on this one. It's the documentary about the filming of Fitzcarraldo, in which Herzog brought this film crew to a significantly remote part of the Amazon, in contact with, in conjunction with, very small, very isolated tribes who live there, and actually did the thing that the character in the movie tries to do, which is lift this giant boat up over a mountain, really not, but a particularly steep and high hill from one tributary to another of the Amazon. And, obviously they had modern equipment and things to make it a little bit easier in the movie than it would have if it was in the same time period. I don't know. Go see, find that movie. It's out there all over the place. My Best Fiend is out there as well. That covers, I think, the sort of the major fascinating parts of the Herzog, the filmmaker story. But I think for me, where the win in this was, where the fascination was, is the stories of his early childhood. You don't really think about, what if you're, a couple, 2, 3 years old, living in Nazi Germany at the height of the war. Right? I mean, he's very honest and straightforward about his parents both being members of the Nazi Party, his mother in particularly, apparently fairly strident devotee of the worst regime of all time, pretty much. I mean, if not, yeah, right. But at the same time, he's a little kid. He's not political. Like a 3, 4, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, or whatever he was. It's not going to be a sort of apparatchik of some sort of party. So it was really a story about his childhood was Werner and his brother, who were just kids, and they were just sort of they lived in the very rural, very poor part of Germany. There were deprivations, clearly, because the worst thing that's ever happened in all of human history was happening around them, which they were generally unaware of. And they just explored. They explored the countryside, the forest. They went on these long hikes. They created sort of this imaginative childhood experience in the midst of, and I mean literally midst of, this spectacularly horrible global conflagration. So right there, there's some stories to be told. Yeah. Of course, then after the war, there's moving to cities, which he found, quite a culture shock. He actually met Kinski, who was renting a room in the same house when he was just a kid, and Kinski was already like nuts. So that's really interesting, that all that early stuff, and then it just continues on in a what I guess you could call a kind of Herzogian fashion, right? That there's a sense of an A line through this. He's telling the story of his life, but it moves around. It isn't just sort of a straight line, right? This is what I did at the age of, when can you really remember? 6, 7, right? 5, 6. And then the next year I did that, and then we kept doing this, and then I went to school, and right in that sort of straight line thing. It doesn't randomly pop in and out through time like Elvis Costello's autobiography. Big Elvis Costello fan. The book needed an editor. Big sort of, like, let me get my hands on that. I would have helped him put that into anything like a coherent form, right? But still love the book because, again, a creative genius whose work I have really admired since I was just a kid, and getting a glimpse into the thought process, right? The creative process. And Herzog does get into that in here. And he is this incredibly iconoclastic guy. He seems to, and he kind of talks about that, right? He seems to be drawn to, how can I make the hardest possible movie? It's not even, I think in any artist's career, it's sort of, what are the opportunities? I've said this before, I think as any kind of an artist, you should at least consider walking through the doors that are open for you, right? That it isn't necessarily about, okay, I've graduated from film school or art school or high school, or I've made the decision that I'm going to be this sort of artist. I now will accept nothing but greatness. Well, that's great, right? Try for greatness. But meanwhile, you have to learn your art, you have to learn your craft. He talks very openly about deciding after seeing some movies that he was going to be a filmmaker. Right? He had no background in that at all, no connections in that. Again, coming from this sort of broken family, sort of poor, kind of peasant family. It wasn't like, whatever, Gerhard Herzog, president of Paramount Studios German office, or no connections whatsoever, no idea how to do it. And that struck a chord with me because when I had just graduated from college and had decided, it was cool, I went to film school. I know that it's not going to happen because I'm not going to just move to LA and do all this stuff. That's impossible. Also, no connections. Really, I found that I was a writer then and started writing poetry and short stories. And of course, because at the age of 20, I was a genius and everything was perfect, why isn't anybody recognizing that? I keep getting rejection letters. It never occurred to me that maybe I needed to learn how to do it more and really get an understanding and learn the craft and practice the art. But it was also the real era of zines and the sort of underground punk fanzines and stuff like that. Inspired by that, I started my own zine, my own literary magazine, which I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I would know never. I was never an intern at a magazine. It never occurred to me to go learn this somewhere. I was seeing other people just kind of doing it, so I just kind of did it. And looking back on it now, it looks super primitive because it is super primitive. But this was the same sort of self prescribed baptism by fire that Herzog went through, where he's just, I'm going to make movies. How? I don't know. I'll figure it out as I go. Where? I'll figure it out as I go. Who's paying for it? I'll figure it out as I go. I did the same thing on a much smaller scale with a very small magazine that didn't sell, right? It wasn't like, and then I sold it to Time Warner for $10 million. No, right? I kept going as long as I could. I made it through 5 issues. And then it just started to, the credit started to run out, basically, and I just could not continue to pay to make this thing happen. Again, this is the mid-'80s. This is not like I went to WordPress, like I have my blog, it's just on free WordPress, and ta-da, there it is, right? It cost money to print and ship and do all that stuff. So, but in the meantime, I learned, whether I meant to even or not, right? How to work this, what is expected of an editor. And looking back on that, man, I was just a complete failure. But it put me in that mindset, and it started me thinking, well, now what else can I do, right? And so from there, started to work on getting some freelance projects in the role-playing game business. You can see my RPGs back there. Got a little bit of attention there, started to get paid. Learning, understanding, thinking, writing, really immersing myself in it. And TSR as a junior editor, miraculous, almost 30 years ago. It's 30 years ago toward the end of this month. And I've been an editor ever since, right? Always learning along the way. Every day is a learning experience. And that was something else I got from Herzog's book, was that he didn't just say, all right, I figured it out. I had the success, right, which probably would have been, Fitzcarraldo. Now I can just coast. Now I'm just going to nail it, right? Now it's just, which of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies do you want me to direct? Let's go, right? Not attacking the filmmakers that made that thing happen, which up to a certain point I was a huge fan of. He just kept being himself. He just kept being a guy who looks like that. And titles his autobiography, Every Man for Himself and God Against All. We've been having smoke here, which is now a new thing in the Pacific Northwest from like maybe the last 4 or 5 years, where in the summer we get smoke from fires all around. Because climate change is pretend, or maybe it's real and it's actually happening. But anyway, pardon me. I could cut all around this, but listen, it's time for us to start grappling with the realities. Full-throated recommendation for Werner Herzog's Every Man for Himself and God Against All. So let's start talking about the 100-book challenge. That's book 25. That means I am 1/4. This is all, I'm just now infused with mathematics, so get ready. Mathematics are happening. 25 is 1/4 of 100. I looked that up on the internet, and ChatGPT said some people think that 25 is 1/4 of 100, but we're not completely verified on that. It is. Anyway, and of course, I don't look up anything on ChatGPT. 25 books in, a quarter of the way there, and there have been moments of weakness. First of all, I go to the library. I still go to the library. There's going to be noises as I shift things from underneath my microphone, so calm down. I mean, do I look like Anderson Cooper? I'm making this shit up as I go along for sure. How you doing? Had to go to the library to get my copy of Steering the Craft, a 21st Century Guide to Sailing the Sea of Story by the great Ursula K. Le Guin, which is our Goodreads group read for this month, and I am woefully not even started. It really, that was the introduction that I read, and it's fascinating. And I'm thinking, okay, so each of the parts in here, bonus book content, ends with an exercise, and I'm like, oh, there's no reason to even read this if you don't do the exercises. So, but here's the thing, right? Big deadline energy continues. Worked all through the weekend. Kind of took a partial day off yesterday. And so, it's been hard to start this, and now I'm halfway through the month, and so it's time to get on board with that. But so, with the 100-book challenge, I can still do essential reading from the library, of course. But so I was there at the library and I saw the poster. And I think I put it out just on Blue Sky, right, for the one person who probably saw that. I think I'm going to have to temporarily suspend the 100-book challenge because I don't, the library sale is right? The last library sale, I'm just reaching, is where I found this. Did you see that video? Am I getting weird? You can see all sorts of reflections. This, where I first saw it, and I was like, oh my God, it's the first edition of Dune. And of course it was not. You can see the red case material. You can see the distinctive trim size. I had to do some investigation. Very helpful people out on the internet came to the rescue. This is I'm sure enough to say it out loud, 1974 Science Fiction Book Club edition. So this is not, I paid $50 for it, and it's probably worth about $50. But it's awesome, and I'm keeping it forever and ever and ever here on the shelf of favorites. So it's like books for $1, $2. I mean, you've seen all of my videos, the last library book haul, great stuff, not a lot of money. And here's the important part. I mean, honestly, yes, I love to buy books and I love to have books. I love to be surrounded by books. Look at this, is like the smallest amount of books that I have. Downstairs is the full, bigger, giant wall library. And I'm also supporting the Friends of the Library, right? Because you got to support your library. Here in the Seattle area, we are immune from the worst of what's going on in America. Not really, right? But there is a certain immunity being in one of the places where there's an active kind of political resistance to things. And so the libraries here are still open and not pulling books off the shelf and not as, either under attack or essentially destroyed as they have been in other parts of the country and on military bases and other places where that's getting particularly frightening. So to be able to say, hey man, I appreciate that these libraries aren't just here, but are still here and will continue to still be here, is important. Is that Phil, the obsessive book buyer, collector-ish, rationalizing? Yeah, right, maybe. I mean, let's be realistic. Yeah. maybe, right? But at the same time, I feel pretty good about throwing a couple shekels my library's way and getting some cool books out of the deal. Yeah. So that's not coming up for a little while still. I'm definitely not going to read 75 books between now and then. And also work. Because remember, my job, I am actually, this is not a side hustle for me, editing, right? I'm not at Reedsy to make a couple extra dollars a month and maybe have a good time or whatever. This is what I do for a living. This is what I've been doing for a living for 30 years now. So all day for work, I'm reading mostly fantasy novels. Very deeply reading those, right, with extreme concentration. So the 100-book challenge is for the other stuff, the stuff that's really just for me. This isn't going to be included on the 100-book challenge because I didn't own it. But, I'm also reading this with the group, and also part of my own ongoing education as an editor, as a writer, as a reader, right? A fan of the written word. Now I don't know. I mean, I'm losing my thread here, but at this 1/4 mark, I'm kind of like, and with the library sale coming up, I'm thinking, do I keep doing this? Because part of why I started it too was I'm showing you selective portions of a house that is in a great need of repair and renovation. And I thought I needed to not just focus the money, because I've spent money on books, but I don't spend thousands and thousands of dollars on books. So, I mean, I bet $50 for that, $75 for the Origins of Marvel Comics box set there. It's extremely rare that I pay that much for one book. And I'm talking about these library sales where I'm going to get a paperback for $1, a hardcover for $2, right? So it's just not like, well, I spend, $5,000 a year on books, and so I'm going to turn that money into doing the floors downstairs, which is like the next major thing. Did the roof for $15,000. Yikes. But it is a sort of mental what am I giving up in terms of things that I can stop doing and survive. I have plenty to read. In order to sort of shift focus onto, let's just get this place right where we need it to be. That is still true. But, the finances have been in a good place, all that kind of stuff. Again, fear not, no GoFundMe at the end of this. I'm okay. You're okay. We're okay. I hope you're okay. I'm okay. It's 2025, okay, but I'm okay, right? We're okay. I hope we're okay. Let's be okay. Right? But again, this is sort of mental thing of, is that what it is? An almost kind of religious thing, an almost kind of Lenten thing? Like, I'm going to give up buying books in order to focus my spiritual energies on getting tile down on the floor downstairs and get that carpeting, like carpet versus shelter puppy situation, finally resolved. It's not pretty. It's not good. We won't even talk about it. The floor needs to be done. The roof needed to be done. Now it's the floor next priority. Anyway, what am I even talking about? So I thought, I'm a quarter of the way through these videos. God bless the couple, 2-3 dozen people who watch these. How you doing? I love you. Tell your friends. Comment, like, share, subscribe, all that business. That's not why I'm doing this, right? I'm not doing this for YouTube views. I'm not monetized. I make no money from this. This is in fact taking me away right now from doing work that is paid. But I started doing these videos as a way to make myself accountable, right? To sort of put something out there into the world, however few or however many people see it, that says, hey, Phil's doing this. He's committed to this. Could I do this? Should I do this? Is there worth doing? I counted up more than 2,400 unread books, that I own, that's a lot. So it felt like, boy, I could do. I mean, doing this 100 book challenge doesn't even scratch the surface of the books that I own already. So I think there was good reasons to do it, right? The idea of kind of mentally shifting to, let's just take care of hearth and home a little bit, and then also that, but then also just kind of, this community thing of, there's these challenges out here, and it gives us a sort of a little platform to talk about books and to talk about reading and stuff like that. I think one of the reasons that I'm a little bit reticent about it, and always was, and the reasons that I don't do things that are coming from other booktubers, I don't do Garb August. I know that's a criminality thing. I call it criminology, criminality thing, because I'm reluctant to call any books garbage. Do we need to get into a whole thing where I worked at TSR and Wizards of the Coast publishing D&D related books that were, slotted into that category when people didn't even read them? Whatever. So, I don't do that because I read books and I just love stuff like Perry Rodan. I'm just started reading another Perry Rodan book. Here's Doc Savage, right? So I don't know. Garbage is no. I will read horror whenever I want to read horror. It doesn't have to only happen in October. I love Robert E. Howard, right? I can read Robert E. Howard whenever I want to, not just in September. So those things tend to be kind of, that's fun. And if it gets anyone reading Robert E. Howard, then yay, right? If it gets people reading books that are looked down on and that they may find are actually really fun and cool, then great, right? If it gets anybody reading anything, then I'm always going to be a fan of books and readers of books and people who buy books and write books and publish books and sell books and, shelve books and check them out at the library, etc. So, okay, right? But for the most part, I'm kind of like, I got this other, life that I need to manage as well. And then how many of these and then I have to read this for that, and then I'm reading the other thing for the other thing. I am reading this I promise, this will be done by the end of September for the Goodreads group. So I thought the 100-book challenge is something that I probably should do, right? And it's definitely something that I could do. I certainly have more than 100 unread books. Even with my sort of, scheme where I'm flipping from, I'll put the little picture of that on here, the list, different series. I'm not going to, by the time I get to 100 books, I won't have gone through those series to the point where I haven't got the next book. So I should be fine there. And if one of those series is kind of hanging in suspense there for a minute until we get through that, then that's what it is. But I don't know. I really had a moment, particularly yesterday, where I had that afternoon off. We were out and about. We went to one of our favorite places for lunch, which was right in the same mall as a fantastic independent bookstore here in the Seattle area. And I was like, maybe this is the time to call it, right? It's 25 books in, a quarter of the way through. Can we say, I gave it the old college try, now it's time to start buying books again, in time for the library sale, I'm here. But then I just thought, you know what, listen, part of this too is, I live and die by deadlines. So I've always been very deadline driven. I lost a little bit of that after I, left Wizards of the Coast, or was asked to leave Wizards of the Coast. And then it got a little fuzzy there for me for a minute, but I've really recaptured the, absolute do or die deadline drop dead fill. And, a part of this 100-book challenge for me too is also getting back into that, right? Saying, I'm going to do a thing and then doing the thing. And that gets hard when you work for yourself, right? When I don't have a boss looking over my shoulder saying, like, you got that for me? Where's the thing? I need the thing now. Or like, oh, we changed the schedule and now we need this earlier, which was a big part of my life in Wizards of the Coast. But, you know, so I mean, I've lost a little bit of that. You know, my whole family has noticed that basically. Like, I don't go anywhere. I don't, and trying to get me to be at a certain place at a certain time, I've gone into sort of extreme adult ADHD mode where, you know, like I have an appointment with the eye doctor, everything's fine, checkup thing, Friday morning, and it's like this whole week I'm like, okay, I got to get ready for that appointment for the eye doctor because it's one of like two things I'm going to do this month. Require me to be out of the house at a particular place at a certain time. So you start to lose that stuff. It certainly didn't help over the pandemic when I wasn't even able to, if I wanted to, like, just kind of, you know what, I'm taking the day off, let's go out for lunch, let's do the stuff that we did yesterday. Went to like fun little stores and we did fun little things. The more you are a work from home one person operation, the more insular you become until your universe shrinks down to the deadline, the work, and TV shows and books and stuff like that. So for me, part of the 100 book challenge was to sort of come out as a reader and say, I always, was very anti book review, and I still don't read reviews of anything that I've written ever, and always will advise authors never to read reviews of their own stuff. That's subject for another time. But I realized that I have been doing reviews, that as I just held up Every Man for Himself and God Against All, I did a capsule review of that, right? I said I liked it and why I liked it and talked about some of the things that I find in there. But I am uncomfortable just being like a book reviewer at all. So thinking about this in the last really just few days, honestly. Here's the things that I've decided to do. Because it's about the decisions and not about the journey. There's been enough journey. I'm continuing the 100 book challenge. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to get to the end of this because I can. Because I'm going to prove to myself that I can make a promise to myself. Because another thing that I've stopped doing really is writing any sort of long form project. And I keep saying, you know what, I should be really doing that. And I just don't. Because I can make a promise to a client and hit that deadline. If I make a promise to myself, the client's like, when you get to it, just, write that when the other things are all done. And nothing is ever done. There's a project that's done, and then the next project, and the next project. Thank you, right? Knock on wood. But in there, I need to make more space for my writing. And again, so this is sort of this, I have no spiritual component to my life at all. Is it a spiritual journey? Is it a sort of self-improvement thing or something like that that says, I'm going to give myself this challenge that no one is imposing. Nothing happens if I decide, you know what, I'm buying books. I don't get fired or whatever. So, but I think that's what I've lost, right? Kind of being out here in freelance world for so long, 15 years, right? As long as I was deadline guy at Wizards of the Coast, that I'm trying to kind of put back into my day-to-day experience, and not just in my work experience, which is still true, but all the other stuff. So I will continue the what the hell, spiritual journey of the 100 book challenge, but also, this sort of mental exercise of you're giving this up in order to do the other thing, so get busy on the other thing. I'm going to do finish the 100 book challenge. I'm going to think about a pause for the library sale because it's a good cause, but I do have to wrestle with, is it there because I'm supporting the library, which is important, or am I going to that so that I can just have this like thrill of like finding the old Dune edition and all the stuff that I've got from those library sales where I'm just like, oh, this is so awesome. So I have to wrestle with that between now and then. But I think, right now I feel like I'm committed to the 100 book challenge. But then also these videos, are they going to continue to be, hey, I read this book, here's what I liked about it, here's what I didn't like, which is a review one way or another, yeah? Or, talking about this, we talked about sort of his journey from, hey, movies are cool, I want to make those, so I'm going to make movies, having no idea how to do it, and then just pushing his way through to become a filmmaker, and me pushing my way through to be a writer, to be an editor, to work and understand the publishing business, right? So I don't think. Here's the promise I'm going to make in the same way that I made a promise to myself that then carried out here into YouTube land to read 100 books I already own before I buy any more. The promise is from now on, for the next 75 books, the last 75 books in this book challenge, these videos I will try to make sure that they are not necessarily book good, book bad, buy book, don't buy book. Which honestly, what do you do with that, right? To talking about these books in the context of being an author. Yeah, this is Fantasy Author's Handbook. This is a companion to the blog where I talk about writing, yeah, how to actually write that. What does the sort of genre landscape look like? All the things around the writing life and literal how to craft stuff. So I'm going to redirect the rest of these 100 book challenge videos to, okay, I read this book. As an author, here's what I got out of that. That may also tend to sort of push me in the direction of certain books. I'm going to continue to read the series books. So I've got Perry Rodan started. This was my random pick. This is The Mind Warpers by Eric Frank Russell. I read chapter 1, right? About I don't know how long ago, and haven't picked it up since. So I'm still doing that. I'm still finding time to read with a lot of deadline stuff happening, all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to start talking about these books not as simple kind of consumer reviews, like should you read this, should you buy this, but in terms of, as an author, what did I get out of that? As an editor, what did I get out of that? What do I think, as an editor, other authors could find in that book? Why am I reading stuff like this? We talked about that, right? A fascination with the creative process of other authors, I think, is extremely important. The intellectual curiosity that gets you out of your genre, out of your category. So if you're writing fiction, are you also reading nonfiction? Are you reading poetry? Are you reading, right? We talked about that a little bit in some of these just recently, or I read that play, The Lady's Not for Burning. So we're going to talk about in these videos more, which we already have done, talking about the book like mythology and stuff like that, in terms of how do we use the books we read as authors to be better at what we do. And yeah, you might be thinking, well, how does Perry Rodan fit into that? Yeah. Is that going to be a lesson on what not to do? Actually, maybe. And we talked about in the last Doc Savage book that I read, what are the things that you learn good writing from bad books? Whatever bad books mean. And I think absolutely yes. You can see a lot of things happening in a Doc Savage book, in a Perry Rodan book, that is instructive, not in terms of the how do I structure a novel or how do I put a a compelling sentence together. But why would this book look like this, right? Why would Lester Dent, the guy behind most of the overwhelming majority of Doc Savage books, use that many words to say the simplest thing, right? What's going on with the Perry Rodan books in terms of also the speed in which they were written, and then also the relative quality of the translation, which I think for that series was always kind of a question mark. Right? What do we talk about? How do we, as authors, as readers of other authors' work, how does the translator fit into that, which is extremely important, right? If you could read German, you could go back to the original Perry Rodan stories and see what they looked like in their original publication, which they were published really as magazines that would come out weekly. So again, just like Doc Savage, it's like, give me the story, boom, 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 fast, 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 fast. So what does that end up looking like? Is it a good thing to write fast, right? I say it is, but then edit slow, right? Those are two examples where I don't think the second part was really adhered to. So we can talk about that kind of stuff. What worked, what didn't work, and I think sometimes you can actually learn more from, I don't want to use the word failure because here they are and I'm still reading them and they're still out there, and there's a fan community, more views of Doc Savage and things like that who, kind of are out there, and I'm one of you. There they are, right? There's a lot of great storytelling in there, ideas, and the idea that, can you just kind of say, okay, I have a week to write a 60,000 word novel, which is a short novel, but 60,000 words is a lot. And then just go boom and just type it and go and end up with really, really fun stuff that really, really works, that has a coherent beginning, middle, and end, right? A generally simple structure, but that goes to exotic places and does exotic things, and there's big action set pieces and sneaking around and a real mystery that has to be solved. And all of those things are there, and then just kind of push through as quickly as possible, using the most number of words to get to that limit, right? So these are the things that you're reading as an author bring up and that you can start to think about, that I hope you are thinking about as you're reading. I'm thinking about that. What I'm worried about, and enough to redouble my efforts, is in these videos, have I been talking enough about that? When I should really be talking 99% about, as authors, what can we get out of this book? What can we get out of books like this? Why is this helpful? Is it an example of what not to do here, what to do there, etc.? So that is my promise, two-part promise. One, I'm finishing the 100-book challenge. I'm going to read 100 books before I buy any more books, with the sort of halfway mark of I'm still going to make a final decision on the library sale. But let's be honest, in order to really fulfill promise number one, I can't go to a library sale. But I'm going to finish the 100-book challenge. And in these videos, I'm going to talk about these books in terms of writing. Writing fantasy, science fiction, horror in particular, but just writing in general. Writing fiction, writing nonfiction. And yes, fiction can actually inform your writing of nonfiction, and nonfiction absolutely informs your writing of fiction. So this is what we're going to do. Finish the 100-book challenge. Talk about these books in terms of writing. I have been Phil. I have talked long enough. I've opened up to you today. So the least you can do is subscribe. And then, I don't know what's going to be this video. The algorithmically, which I don't know what to do with my hands.